My name is Jessica Miller, a 26-year-old nurse living in Austin, Texas. For 3 years, I'd been dating Brandon Walker, a charming and ambitious real estate agent. Everyone said we were the perfect couple. We laughed, we planned trips, and we even talked about marriage. Or so I thought. One Friday evening, I got off work earlier than usual. I decided to surprise Brandon with his favorite cheesecake and drop by his apartment unannounced. I had a key, he gave it to me 2 years ago. That's why what I found broke me completely. As I stepped in quietly, the sound of soft laughter echoed down the hall. My heart stopped. I followed the sound, and there he was, in our bed, with another woman. I froze. I couldn't breathe. The cheesecake fell from my hand and hit the floor with a dull thud. Brandon looked up. The guilt in his eyes was instant, but it didn't matter anymore. My heart had shattered. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just walked away. Back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel and burst into tears. Everything I believed in collapsed. I drove aimlessly for hours until I ended up at Zoe's Cafe, a quiet place I used to visit during college. I didn't plan to call anyone, but somehow my fingers dialed Daniel Rivera, my old college friend. "Jess?" he answered, surprised. I hadn't spoken to him in months. I didn't know who else to call, I choked. "I'm on my way," he said without hesitation. Daniel arrived 20 minutes later, no questions, just warm eyes and open arms. He sat beside me and let me cry. He didn't try to offer solutions or talk about Brandon. Instead, he just listened. That night, I stayed at his place. Over the next few weeks, Daniel became my anchor. He brought me groceries when I couldn't leave the house. He sent me good morning texts. He reminded me of who I was before Brandon. One night, we sat under the stars on his apartment roof. "Jess," he said gently, "you didn't deserve what happened to you. But you do deserve to heal." "I don't know if I can trust again," I whispered. He took my hand. "Then let me help you. No pressure. Just, let's start with friendship again." Months passed. I started painting again. Something Brandon always said was a waste of time. I went hiking. I smiled more. One afternoon, while helping Daniel organize a charity event for a children's hospital, I saw a little girl smile as I painted a butterfly on her cheek. I looked up and saw Daniel watching me, his eyes soft with admiration. It hit me then, I wasn't just healing. I was growing. 1 year later, I stood in the same cafe where I had called Daniel that painful night. Except this time, I wasn't broken. I was whole. And beside me was the man who helped me rebuild. Brandon tried to reach out months ago. He sent messages full of apologies. I never responded, because sometimes the best revenge isn't anger. It's peace. And I found mine, with Daniel, with myself, and with the quiet strength that comes from turning pain into purpose. Ending message for YouTube viewers. Never forget your worth. What breaks you doesn't define you, what you rise from does. Share this story if you've ever had to rebuild after heartbreak. And remember, healing is possible. It had been a year since I walked out of Brandon's life and into my own healing. With Daniel Rivera beside me, my heart slowly found its rhythm again, not just as a girlfriend or a partner, but as Jessica Miller, a woman rediscovering her own strength. We weren't rushing anything. There were no dramatic kisses or forced promises. Just small, consistent moments that felt real, his hand brushing mine as we cooked dinner, his smile during our long walks, the way he always remembered how I liked my tea. But one night changed everything. We were volunteering at a hospital gala. Daniel, dressed in a navy blue tux, looked nervous. I teased him, thinking he was just anxious about the speech he had to give. But when the time came, he surprised everyone, especially me. He stepped up to the microphone, cleared his throat, and said, "A year ago, someone I care about deeply walked into this cafe we're standing in today, broken, betrayed, and unsure if she could ever feel safe again. Tonight, I stand beside her, not as her savior, but as the man who saw her put herself back together, piece by piece. And now, if she'll let me, I'd love to be part of her future." He walked off the stage and straight to me, pulling out a small velvet box. My heart stopped. Not because I wasn't ready, but because I knew I was. "Jessica," he whispered, "this isn't a proposal.
Not yet.
But it's a promise. A promise that I'll never be the reason you cry again. That I'll never make you feel small. This ring, it's a placeholder. For the future. For love. For trust." I held back tears and nodded, whispering, "Yes. 100 times yes." 2 months later, Brandon showed up at my art exhibit. He stood near the doorway, awkward and unsure. My paintings had become popular locally, expressive, bold, and full of color, the opposite of how I felt when I was with him. He waited until the crowd thinned and approached. "I've seen your work," he said. "You've changed." I smiled softly. "No, Brandon. I became who I was always meant to be. You just didn't let me shine." He nodded. "I'm sorry. I forgave you a long time ago," I replied. "Not for you, but for me." I turned and walked away. And just like that, I closed the last door of my past. 1 year later, under a quiet Texas sunset, Daniel and I exchanged vows in a small garden surrounded by family and friends. There was no big wedding, no extravagant plans, just love. Pure and honest. I looked into his eyes and said, "You met me when I was in pieces. You never tried to fix me. You just stayed until I could find my own strength. And that's what love really is." Final message for YouTube viewers. Sometimes the person who breaks you teaches you your greatest lesson, but the one who helps you rebuild shows you your true worth. If you've ever been hurt and learned to love again, this story is for you. Like, comment, and share if you believe that heartbreak isn't the end. It's just the beginning of something more beautiful.